Welcome everyone, Costini here with a discussion about Heinrich Kemmler, the legendary lord of the vampire counts. And while he may not necessarily be as strong as Vlad and Isabella are, certainly Vlad in combat can solo entire armies potentially, he does have his own benefits in a campaign which can allow him to achieve, well, an enormous amount. Like over here, if we look at the diplomatic situation, if we just use the diplomatic status map, you can see that I've taken over a significant portion of Bretonnia, the Vaults, as well as gotten vassals in both Ikeclaw and Scrag, and also allied Vlad. So this is a really powerful campaign situation that you wouldn't necessarily experience if you're playing Vlad. See, Vlad is powerful, but one of the things that does typically end up happening when you're playing Vlad is that Heinrich and Musalon tend to get wiped out. When you're playing Kemmler, well, you're actually making the situation far easier for Vlad. While this may make it harder to confederate Vlad as a legendary lord, it will ensure that you do end up having a really powerful ally or multiple powerful allies in a campaign. Also, because you're starting close to Musalon itself, and interestingly enough, both of them are counted as capitals. Both of them have the capital icon. Because you start close, you can just rush Lyonesse, sell that to Musalon, and then don't declare war on Lewin and Leoncourt, don't get a military alliance with Musalon, and eventually Lyonesse will be retaken by Lewin, the Red Duke will be taken out, and you will then be able to confederate them. That's the key to confederation. And the Red Duke is certainly really powerful. The benefit of his skill line is that you can get both Doom Rider and Grave Sentinels at the same time. Typically speaking, Grave Sentinels is better because you can always get Ordo Draconis if you really want to. Regardless, an enormous amount of power in this particular campaign from a diplomatic standpoint alone. The reason you have such a diplomatic standpoint, diplomatic power, comes down to this. Many of the factions that do surround you, one way or another, with the exception of, funnily enough, demons, but many of the factions that do actually surround you don't particularly hate you so much. I mean, some of them will have -40 aversion, but that's doable from a diplomatic perspective. It gets really tricky when you get -100 aversion, but here's the crazy thing about Kemmler. So every vampire count legendary lord does have access to Alamian. Now, Alamian will effectively nullify, or go a long way of nullifying, any kind of aversion that human factions will feel towards you. And that is actually quite a very substantial benefit that you can take advantage of during the course of a campaign. So if we look at, say, Kislev, we can see that 30 diplomatic relations is going a long way in that. Here's the crazy thing about Kemmler. One of the problems might be chaos. Well, you get a +30 diplomatic relations with warriors, chaos, demons, beastmen, and Norska. So you won't have a situation as often as you might see in many other campaigns where Be'lakor, for instance, is constantly raiding, and once you've taken certain territory, you don't have unless you choose that fight. You're one of the few legendary lords that starts in your Be'lakor who can actually avoid the war entirely against him. Unless we're talking about other warriors of chaos, you may not be able to avoid it as Norscan, though it is possible, to be certain. But just one of those factors that does play a role in a campaign. So you end up, and one of the benefits of a Vampire Counts campaign, as opposed to, say, a Dark Elf campaign, because Dark Elves are also in this kind of diplomatic situation where they're not so hated by anyone that it opens up a lot of possibilities. Well, one of the benefits of the Vampire Counts is also the fact that you can get diplomatic vassalization. Tomb Kings can do it as well, to be certain, but it's just one of those points that does matter. So you take critical territory and you sell it to factions. So for instance, over here I vassalized Ikeclaw by taking the Massive Oracle and just selling it to him in exchange for a vassal agreement. And now, well, we've taken out the Oak of Ages over here. One of the problems Ikeclaw has in his campaign, especially under AI control, is gaining territory, so this is a significant benefit. Also kind of hilarious that you end up like with an Undercity under the Oak of Ages. Regardless, if there's anything that's kind of annoying this campaign, is that your short campaign victory condition does require you to deal with Durfu, and honestly, Durfu is not real. Durfu, you just got to go out of your way to deal with. But to be fair, like the short campaign victory condition is not important. It's the long campaign victory condition that might cause you certain issues, and that is the Winds of Magic benefit is worth it. Casualty replenishment is not important for vampire counts because they get casualty replenishment heroes. They have the Von Karstein Lord, who also gives them casualty replenishment. Some really significant benefits with respect to that. Okay, but beyond the diplomacy and beyond the vampire count's diplomatic prowess, there's also another factor to take into consideration: climate suitability. One key difference between Kemmler and Vlad is that you can sell in the mountains. Vlad gets the jungle, from my understanding. But you certainly don't have suitable climate in the mountains as Vlad. You have it as Kemmler because you start in the mountains. And that's a really nice benefit because it means all these mountain ranges that you're seeing from the Vault, right here, Zufbar potentially, they're available for you to take. Now, it's not really too big of an issue for Vlad because he can always vassalize a dwarf faction like Ungram and make that work, and also do it as Kemmler. Not really an issue. Not necessarily as quickly. Then you get immunity to Chaos Corruption and Chaos Waste Attrition, so you can play an entire campaign in the Chaos Waste if you really want to. And by the way, what's really great about this is it's a faction-wide benefit. So if you look at Malice Darkblade, if you look at Boris Ursus, who also starts in the Chaos Waste, they only get Chaos Waste attrition immunity and immunity to Chaos Corruption for their own personal armies. You have a faction-wide. Honestly, I think like Boris Ursus and Malice Darkblade could, at least Boris could really use it faction-wide. Like this kind of benefit doesn't necessarily make sense for Kemmler, but still. You also get the minus 10% raise that cost, so you can form up armies much easier using this mechanic and get high-end units. This is one of the principal benefits in a Vampire Counts campaign, because like you look at these units, you look at these armies that I'm running around with over here. All of them have been recruited effectively through Raise Dead. They haven't been recruited through normal recruitment means. I mean, some skeletons, a couple of units, absolutely, like some corpse cards here and there, but like Blood Knights, I certainly didn't recruit that. So you get the Raise Dead cost reduction. You get experience gain for Necromancers, and Necromancers are the most plentiful heroes because all you need to do in order to increase Necromancer capacity is to just get a tier 2 growth building, which you would want to do anyway. And also this increases your local recruitment capacity, so regardless, you would still want to go for this. There is, funnily enough, like I think this is a bit of an interesting one to think about, but there is also a building that is increasing, that gives you the Mortis Engine and the Terrorgeist that also gives you Necromancer capacity. Yeah, that's certainly a weird one, but I suppose, you know, it's a way to justify getting rid of the Ossuary if you do get that once you get to like tier 5 and still maintain some of that local recruit capacity and also get a local Lord recruit rank faction-wide. All the same. Now, one of the benefits that Vlad has is he has a bunch of vampires. You certainly won't be running with a ton of vampires. It just takes a while to grow settlements, and you've got other priorities. And the thing is, as a vampire counts, yeah, you may get a bunch of those growth buildings, but you're not really going to prioritize necessarily growth above everything else. Though, to be fair, you also don't have a reason to go for it, to go for anything else. But it just takes time, dozens and dozens of turns to get to tier 4 in a campaign in order to unlock the Vampire Crypts. That's one of the significant benefits that Vlad has that you don't have, but you do have Necromancers. You will have more Necromancers. The important thing, you get the casualty punishment. While you're lacking the crazy melee ability that Vlad does have, you at least get Necromancers to recruit and hero capacity and hero recruit rank for them through the Castle Drakenfeld's Catacombs. Now, we could talk about how Drakenfeld should be in position, but regardless, you also don't need a tier 1 barracks because you get the skeletal spearmen over here. So, you know, it's just getting the barrow is pointless in this campaign. So that's a nice benefit. You also get the Fellbat's ability, though you won't get Graveyard from here. So. Now, another thing to also mention about him when we're looking on this is he has replenishment for territory. He has the Winds of Magic cost for Lore of Vampires and ability Lord of Undeath, which summons Krell. Now, Krell, once you get to rank 12, can be significantly upgraded and make it so he doesn't degrade. While you may not, and you also get further raised hit cost benefits. You're looking at getting 15% plus the 10% faction wide. Then you also, then you're just going to be able to recruit a lot of units very, very quickly in this campaign through the raised head mechanic, and you also have the return of the Lich Master. So you're looking at an enormous, like seriously, when you look, like, you consider this campaign, right? You got Black Knights with Lance and Barding at 189. This is absurd. Like, you might just recruit a ton of units. Like, the reason I don't have tons of money is because I haven't really cared about it. But, like, one of the things you could do, and obviously you should do, is just recruit a ton of units with Kemmler and just, you know, just have him move from battlefield to battlefield, just recruiting a lot, and I do mean a lot, of endgame units in this particular campaign very cheaply. Raise It is available for everyone, but doing it at this significant price reduction is certainly not. On top of that, in this particular campaign, you do get a campaign movement range. Crucially, you get Barrow, you get White Kings. So you get hero recruitment for White Kings faction-wide. You get hero capacity +2, so you're going to have free. And if you take Musalon intact without it being reduced, so if you take it at tier 3, you're also going to get another hero capacity for it. So you're looking at having 4 White Kings. It's not vampire capability, but between Necromancers and White Kings, you will actually be in a pretty solid situation with heroes. Not as great as Vlad and Isabella, but you're just basically trading vampires for whites. Pros and cons with respect to that, but I would say it's kind of useful because you don't have the sheer insane melee capability of Vlad and Isabella. White Kings are kind of going to make up for it. Not quite fully, but they have their own benefits. To be fair, the training benefit they have as opposed to replenishment of vampires, because you have good replenishment through the Necromancers, ain't an issue in this particular campaign. So you end up with a campaign where you have diplomatic dominance, you can recruit high-end armies very, very cheaply if you want to, and the only real downside of this is, yeah, you don't have the insanity of Vlad, but you can benefit from, like Vlad has a relatively safe starting position. What ends up happening in this campaign is between Ungrim and the Empire, he just gets annihilated. Well, you deal with Karl Franz, or you could ally Karl Franz. You don't need to necessarily, like, yeah, sure, for a long campaign victory condition you want it, but you could vassalize Karl Franz if you just decide that's not necessarily important to you. You can ally Chaos, you can ally Order, you can ally Vampires, you can vassalize Vampires, you can confederate them. By the way, don't vassalize Vlad. It might be tempting, but if you vassalize a faction, you won't be able to confederate them. That is a bit of an unfortunate situation, I would say, with respect to vassalization. By the way, I wish Confederation worked more like vassalization to some extent. Like, if you, in terms of being able to get it, because it's easy enough to vassalize, it's really annoying to get Confederations. I understand why CA did it, but it's just like, I wish there was a more sensical way of handling Confederations as opposed to how things are currently handled in the game, where you have to cheese the crap out of it in order to achieve it. Regardless. Kemmler is an underdog. He has an underdog of a camp. He's really considered an underdog. He's really an underdog. A lot of people underestimate him. A lot of people don't realize how significantly powerful he is. Now, the final point I wish to stress out over Kemmler is this. He doesn't start with a blood kiss. He doesn't care about that. First off, because he has free quest items, relatively easy. So he's going to get blood kisses for all of these, right? That's the first thing. Second thing, he starts a war with Artois. He's going to get one from that very quickly. Then you've got Leonis, a second one. Then you've got Lewin, potentially. You've got Baston, you've got the Dwarves, you've got Marienburg. You're in an area, your campaign area is ripe for the taking, and you've got all these minor factions that have lords, because the main way you get blood kisses is you eliminate the faction leaders the first time in battle. You can also get it for other things, sure, vassalization, all that, but the main thing is to eliminate faction leaders. You can use character assassination, but I always find that annoying. It's useful late on in a campaign, but it's not really something I would necessarily bother with early on in a campaign. Early on, you just want to eliminate faction leaders. And because you've got Artois, you've got Baston, you've got Carrick Ziflin, that's 3 factions already. Then then you've got Grom, you've got Marienburg, you've got plenty of opportunities to get a significant amount of blood kisses, and maybe even surpass what Vlad can do in his campaign, or certainly be on par with what Vlad and Isabella can do. Because if you look at Vlad and Isabella's situation, yeah, they start with that blood kiss, but they don't have the same number of quest battles, they don't have the same combination of faction leaders around them, so it's just going to be slower in their campaign, whereas opposed to Kemmler, yeah, he can get this a lot easier. That's also something to point out. So climate, diplomacy, blood kisses, recruitment, you name it, Kemmler has it. He is certainly a stat stick, though he's not bad in battle. It's like, he's not Vlad, but Krell is certainly a powerful lord to actually use in battle, and you have like a combination of magic and melee capability in the same lord is pretty solid. That's all I had to say. Questine signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications. Stay tuned for more.